It is 2:00 p.m. on Wednesday, February 18th, 2:00 p.m., Laguna Woods City Council meeting. I now call this meeting to order. Members of the public wishing to address the City Council on items appearing on this agenda are advised to indicate their interest in doing so by submitting a speaker card to the city staff or proceeding to the podium one by one at the time an item is considered. Members of the public wishing to address the City Council on items not appearing on this agenda may do so during item 5. Each speaker will have the opportunity to speak for up to 3 minutes, once per agenda item, unless otherwise allowed by the City Council. To ensure each speaker is provided with an uninterrupted opportunity to speak for the full time allotted, members of the City Council and city staff are asked to reserve any responses they wish to make to public comments until after each speaker has completed their comments. Speakers are requested but not required to identify themselves both on any speaker card and in comments testimony. Speakers are advised that their names and any information submitted on speaker cards or otherwise provided in writing to the city may be disclosed or become a matter of public record. No speaker should expect privacy of such information. May we have the roll call, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Connors. Here. Councilmember Horn. Here. Councilmember Moore. Present. Mayor Pro Tem Lee. Here. Mayor McCary.
Here. Thank you. And now we'll have a Pledge of Allegiance. We'll be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Captain Ryan Bishop of LA County Fire.
Honorable Mayor, city staff, and citizens, please place your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next agenda item is a presentation and ceremonial matters, African American History Month. Would you read the proclamation, Madam Clerk, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City of Laguna Woods African American History Month, February 2026, proclamation. Whereas African Americans have played a critical role in the social, economic, and political development of the United States, and whereas African Americans have a proud legacy of service and dedication to our community, state, and country. And whereas African American History Month is a time for all Americans to remember the stories and teachings of African Americans who have helped to combat prejudice, further the cause of civil rights, and build, serve, and enrich our nation. And whereas the Laguna Woods African American Heritage Club provides residents with opportunities to celebrate and recognize African American culture through social, educational, and historical events unique to African American life. And whereas the City of Laguna Woods is committed to embracing diversity. Now therefore be it resolved that the Laguna Woods City Council does hereby proclaim February 2026 as African American History Month in the City of Laguna Woods and encourages reflection on the contributions that African Americans have made and continue to make both locally and throughout our nation. Dated this 18th day of February 2026.
Thank you. We have any comments from anyone on this proclamation? Anyone from the public? Vicki, please.
I'm just very proud to have this proclamation and that we have an African-American mayor, which is just fantastic. So this is really a hard time for, I think, many Americans, people of color. So I think this is just great. I'm really proud of all of you, the clubs here, and Laguna Woods Village. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to underscore what Vicki said, but also mention There's a public intellectual, very well-known, a black guy named Ta-Nehisi Coates, and he emphasizes that even today in America, many black parents feel compelled to give their kids the talk. The talk. That is, watch out. White Americans perceive you as black, and that can make a difference in dealing with the police and others. And so the talk still has to be given today. And that's really very unfortunate, but apparently a fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the audience want to make a comment? Any council members? Somebody.
Okay, I'll go. I appreciate the comments that have been made. I feel like we are, of course, an equal opportunity council, but I feel like our city is kind of an inclusivity bubble in a country that sometimes is emphasizing different values than the ones we want to promote. And so I'm really glad we're doing this proclamation, as we do others, to emphasize that we appreciate the contributions of all of the residents of this city and the contributions of all of the minorities to the benefit of the United States.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to celebrate this too. We have such a rich diversity that makes up the tapestry of our country. And each of us has our own cultures and our own ideas, but it's such a wonderful thing to be able to learn more about other cultures and other ideas and what they've gone through, their stories, because all of that contributes so richly to the whole, and you can learn from each other. So this is a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Well, every year when we celebrate the African Heritage Month or Black History Month, many of us think about Martin Luther King Jr. or Rosa Parks. When I think of Rosa Parks, I'm reminded that sometimes real change begins with one quiet, determined act. And the changes comes from the ordinary people. Ordinary people, when they do the extraordinary things, the change start happening. So I am very appreciative of learning about Rosa Parks and her inner strength and her courage to act based on belief. And I think it's challenge to us in public service that to ask ourselves whether we're making room for fairness, room for opportunity for all, and room for respect in our community.
Fran Williams took this time to point out, because she felt, and I think I really share her point of view. Her point of view was, when we think of African Americans, we think of sports people and we think of musicians, and she felt, that you need to dispel that idea that these two categories are dominated, but the contributions in science are equally as strong, and leaders and elected people. And I think Black History Month gives us an opportunity to notice in the stereotype of the sports figure and the musician only, that actually these other areas are equally represented. A lot of people. In fact, she pointed out the number of elected people in Orange County actually is rather high. That if you look around and see the positions, because we tend not to think about that, and I think once you look at it and realize it, you realize, wow, look how many professional people. And I happen to notice it particularly, I don't know if any of you have, in Long Beach. I noticed a very large population in Long Beach. When I would go to the aquarium particularly, I would see all these kids, and they were fantastic kids. They were really polite and so on and so forth. And my perception of what I had thought about Long Beach before, it's not at all like that. You've got a huge population, a very well affluent, well-educated group of people, and I think you need to understand that description and the picture of not just being athletes, not just being musicians, but being equally represented in all these other categories. It's an excellent time, and once a year at least, although once a month isn't very often, but at least once a year, to familiarize yourself with some of the individuals who've made this so many strong contributions, particularly in science, and as I mentioned, in the elected officials in Orange County. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to add a couple of, in addition to that's already been said, February being Black History Month, it's interesting that one of the key leaders in terms of the civil rights movement basically made his transition this month in Black history, and that's Reverend Jesse Jackson, who passed away a day or so ago. So honoring the work that was done by Jesse Jackson and the PUSH movement and all of the civil rights movements, kudos to that, and it's a good opportunity for us to recognize those. The other thing I wanted to just address is, first of all, I'm grateful for the city for recognizing this month as Black History Month. And also just to highlight, according to the last census, I believe, the 2020 census, the African American population in all of Orange County is less than 1%. So for us it's a very, very low percentage of African Americans in Orange County. And if you look at that, half of us are here in this chamber right now. But, it's good that we honor Black History Month, but it's also good that we honor the contributions of all Americans, African Americans, because once we acknowledge one culture, that opens the door to acknowledge all cultures. And so when we honor one, I think that creates an opportunity to honor all of us. So I appreciate all of the compliments and the comments that have been made regarding Black History Month. And I appreciate the city of Laguna Woods for honoring Black History Month. And I hope you take an opportunity to look at the display that's put on by that's put together out in the lobby by the Orange County Public Library and the city of Laguna Woods. So we are honoring Black History Month in many ways. So thank you again for everyone who showed up today. Thank you for your comments. And before we take a break for a photo op, does anyone else in the audience want to make a comment? No? Then we will take a brief recess and do a photo. Oh, the proclamation
I'll
has
move
been
the
moved in
proclamation.
second.
I second.
Moved in second. We'll just take a brief recess and do a photo op with the proclamation.
Let's go ahead and vote on the
Vote.
proclamation
Oh.
for you. You have a motion and a second. So
Oh, motion in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Are there any opposing? None. Now can I bang the gavel? Okay, now we can reconvene to regular city business. We are now at agenda item 5, public comments. Again, this is a time and the place for members of the public to address city council on items not appearing on this agenda. As a reminder, each speaker will have the opportunity to speak once for up to 3 minutes unless otherwise allowed by the council. As said earlier, to ensure each speaker is provided with uninterrupted opportunity for the full allotted time, members of the city council and city staff are asked to reserve any responses they wish to make to public comments until after each speaker has completed their comments. Please note again, pursuant to state law, the city council is unable to take action on items not appearing on this agenda, but may ask clarifying questions of the speaker, engage in brief discussions, refer item to the city staff, and/or schedule items for consideration at a future meeting. So we do have 2 in-person comments. Vicki Johnson.
2024, the Orange County Power Authority presented to the City Council. And there was a lot of discussion of our comments. And I feel the council wisely decided to table the Orange County Power Authority. I continued to follow it because it's a really interesting topic and organization. So because OCPA, the Orange County Power Authority, has fallen into financial duress, in January, they raised their rates to be 12 to 15% more than SCE. And there's a handout. This graph is taken right from their webpage. 12 to 15% more than SCE. So I calculated the launch date was to be last month. Had you decided to join OCPA, we would now be being billed, by my estimate, 2 to 3 million more than Laguna Woods would be paying to SCE because OCPA has so raised its rates. No other city, only one other city joined since they presented to you, Fountain Valley. After this rate increase came out, Fountain Valley has delayed their start to after elections. It was going to start in October, but now they've said they're going to delay it to August, but this is a severe blow, and this was part of why we kept expressing concern, having seen Orange County Power Authority in Irvine. So I'm very grateful to you for discussing it and tabling it, because I think today, 2 years later, we could see it would not have been a good decision for our city. And by the way, the emissions are higher than SCE also, so the rates and the emissions. So thank you again for the consideration in 2024, but also for tabling discussion and avoiding potentially a very bad decision, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike Ruff.
Ready? Good afternoon. I'm Mike Ruff. SCE, Edison's Community Solar Program, offers more benefits and avoids the huge negatives of OCPA. I'd like to thank community members and a city council member who publicized this choice in Laguna Woods. I signed up and went to see the actual solar farm in Inyokern assigned to my SCE account. Long Beach did a lot of research and chose this SCE Community Solar over OCPA. SCE's Community Solar is for residents that can't install solar, like renters or can't afford to pay for panels on their home or business. SCE Community Solar customers, SCE, individually enroll for free for a slice of a real solar farm and get a 10% or so discount on generation, a far higher discount than OCPA has ever offered. Customers can cancel anytime. Presently, OCPA is charging 12 to 16% more than SCE, about $20 per month more than SCE. OCP has major negatives. When a city joins OCPA, the entire city, every residence and business is opted in by default. Politically, this is very unpopular. OCPA calls this choice, but really it means the city becomes a captive of OCPA's higher rates and risks. The OCPA board can change its rates anytime, like they did on January 1st this year, but SCE's rates are highly regulated by experts. The terms for a city to exit OCPA are punitive. OCPA can claim many millions are owed by the city. OCPA just sued the county of Orange because they exited, and the county didn't even receive any power or service from OCPA. How about that? The emissions for SCE community solar are far less than OCPA's emissions for basic and smart choice. So it was a good move to table OCPA back in 2024. Thank you for doing that, and thank you again.
I didn't
Thank
know
you.
about the lawsuit from the county, did you?
I believe, do we have an,
We do. We have one written public comment that if the council is agreeable, the person who submitted the public comments requested to be read aloud. There's no objection. The city clerk can do that.
no objection?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To our esteemed City Council of Laguna Woods, regarding the enormous effort put forth in all the actions to combat coyote aggressiveness in our community and prioritize resident and pet safety, thank you. We have been heard and acknowledged. I would like to express my gratitude on behalf of the 450-plus members of the Coyote Management Advocacy Group for Laguna Woods Village. I would also like to say that I could not be more proud of the brave neighbors and residents who have come forward through the pain of their loss to effect the change. Work tirelessly to report, offer suggestions to remedy coyote-related issues, attending meetings, write letters, make donations, and continue in our efforts to work together with authorities from the HOAs and GRF, our beloved city, Fish and Wildlife, and California state and local politicians to solve this. We are at a tipping point. We must continue our work through hazing, reporting, and feeding of wildlife and other infractions, and it will take all of us to end this public emergency. Actions already taken by the city include abating 18 coyotes since July 29, including 3 last week, and the removal of 1 already dead coyote. Helping to coordinate follow-up on landscaping, providing habitat for coyotes. Working with GRF to increase the use of enhanced hazing using water pellets. Putting forward an expansion of the ordinance prohibiting wildlife feeding. Connecting with state officials to raise awareness of the situation and seek resources. As a warning to pet owners, we have entered denning season, the most aggressive coyote season. Be aware at all times. Do not go out at dusk or dawn. After it rains and coyotes have been holed up in their dens, they are hungry and particularly dangerous. Pet owners must take every precaution during this time. Stay off your phones and be prepared as what to do. Pick up your dog immediately if you can. Back away slowly and keep eye contact. Scream and scare the coyote away from you if you're able. You cannot haze and pick up your dog simultaneously, so protect your pet. People not walking pets, please engage in hazing any coyote that demonstrates early aggression, not running away from you. Coyotes can be retrained to be afraid of humans. Do not make these animals habituate near us by feeding. We now have the evidence since July to demonstrate that where residents feed in Laguna Woods, dogs get killed. 15 dogs since July in the same neighborhood as feeders. 8 humans experienced secondary injuries. 4 went to the hospital. Anyone feeding coyotes puts their neighbors and our pets at risk, and you must and will be reported. Thank you, Robin Rose.
Thank you. This ends public comments. No additional. So now we move to
We're at the city treasurer's
treasurer's
report. Could I
report.
ask the city council, though, can we take just a very brief recess for us to resolve a technological issue? Maybe like 2 minutes, and then we'll be right back?
Yes, so, okay. We'll take a couple-minute recess to resolve technical issues. Okay, we're ready to start again. So we've got our technical difficulties worked out?
Technical difficulties resolved.
And now we're ready for the city treasurer report.
All right, I'll be doing the city treasurer's report today. Our city treasurer is out of the office this afternoon. So she did send me some notes, so bear with me a bit here. Total cash and investments on hand across all funds is just over $14.7 million. Roughly $7 million of that is in our general fund for operating purposes. Another $4.65 million is in the general fund for reserve purposes established by the city council. And then we have just under $3.2 million in special revenue funds, primarily for public street purposes, but for other special restricted or committed purposes as well. That 14.7 million or thereabouts is divided up into 3 different categories. The majority of that money sits in one of 2 pooled money investment accounts. We have about 3.9 million in LAIF, which is the state pooled money investment account. And then we have money in CAMP, a different pooled money investment account, just under 3.7 million. Next largest amount is invested in certificates of deposit at just over 6.3 million, or roughly 43% of our total cash and investments. And then we have a much smaller amount, less than $1 million as of January 31st, in our checking account or other cash purposes. Yes.
Do they do how often?
The LAIF fund, I can tell you that in just a moment.
That makes the difference on how we contribute.
It does. So the interest rates are different between LAIF and CAMP as well. So just to give you a comparison, they were really close in January. LAIF's yield for the month was 3.931%. I don't know what they've been predicting relative to that, but the rate was about 3.9%. Our return will be slightly lower because there's some administrative fees deducted from it. By comparison, CAMP, their rate was actually a little bit lower at 3.85% for the month. CAMP pays out monthly. The LAIF pays out quarterly. So one of the benefits to CAMP is that we get those earnings more frequently. Yep. Only bit of notable activity for the month. We transferred 1.3 million from our checking account to LAIF. That was money that had come in from the first large installment of property tax. We received a payment in January of about 1.66 million. We transferred 1.3 million of that over to LAIF, which at the time had the higher of the interest rates between the 2 pooled money investment firm or accounts. Our 2 trust funds both experienced gains in the month of January. Our retiree medical trust fund experienced a gain of $2,692, bringing the total in that fund to just about $162,000. And then our pension liability trust fund, that gained $10,687, bringing the total assets to $589,605. There's a quarterly report that I'm going to give in a moment, but at this point we'll take a break for any public comments on the city treasurer's report for the month of January. And then following that, our recommendation would be that the city council receive and file this report. I see no public comments.
No public comments. Public comments closed.
And we'll take a motion in a second.
Moved in second. All in favor? Aye.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the quarterly financial report. So the quarterly financial report is 1 month behind the monthly report that I just gave. So this is as of December 31st of 2025. So as of the end of December, the city had received 27% of the revenue that it had budgeted to receive. That is expected because we receive the bulk of our property tax payments after the halfway point of the year. So in January, as I mentioned, we received about 1.6 million in property tax revenue that is not reflected in the numbers on the screen or in your agenda report. In the second quarter of the current fiscal year, the three major revenue sources for the general fund, the largest was cannabis business tax revenue at $706,179. That represents 5 months received. Sales tax was the next largest at $476,262. That represents 4 months of sales tax received. And then development processing fees, those are the fees that we charge to recover our reasonable costs of providing building and other related services. That totaled $434,587. As a reminder, that doesn't represent profit. It's offsetting the city's costs for providing those services.
Chris, I had, before you get too far,
Yeah.
you mentioned property taxes. For the benefit of our audience, can you explain what percentage of property taxes we actually get versus how much goes to the county?
Yeah, so it varies by tax rate area, but we receive very, very little of the property tax. There are any number of agencies. It varies, yes. Percentage-wise, very little. Dollar-wise, we do receive a fair amount of it, but collectively, we all pay a lot of property tax as well. But there are any number of agencies in the county, including the county itself, that receive more property tax than the city does. So we have some informational materials here at City Hall if you're interested in digging into those numbers a little bit deeper. But what you'll see is a bar chart with a very, very narrow sliver that is the city of Laguna Woods, and the vast majority of it going elsewhere. Overall, for the general fund, revenue is about where we expected it to be. Expenditures are about where we expect them to be. You can see that it looks like expenditures are outpacing revenue at present, but once we fold in the two installments of property tax that we'll receive, or that we received in January and that we'll receive later this year, that will level out. But the fund balance for the general fund as of December 31st, unaudited, of course, was about $7.8 million. In special revenue funds, most of the revenue and expenditure, or most of the revenue that you see here are for the first 4 or 5 months of the different revenue streams that fold into that. Most of the payments there are 1 to 2 months in arrears, so it's a little bit further behind the general fund. Notable for special revenue funds in the second quarter, we have officially spent and recognized as revenue all of the American Rescue Plan Act dollars. So there's nothing remaining to be allocated there. That money is spent. Expenditures otherwise are expected and in line with budget as they are in the general fund. And then in the capital projects fund, we allocated $28,783 in interest income to the fund in October. Many of the capital projects that are funded through this fund are in early stages of design and engineering, which is why you see very little in the way of expenditures. Transfers were made to fund various projects in the current fiscal year. And then across all funds, we earned 176, let's see. Interest income earned in the second quarter for all funds totaled $167,820, with a total of $292,118 of interest income earned as of December 31st, 2025, which is again roughly where we expected we would be, with interest maybe a smidge lower, but otherwise right on. Additional information for all funds is included in the quarterly financial report, which can be found in the agenda packets. With that, there's an opportunity for public comments, and then staff's recommendation is that you receive and file this quarterly financial report as well.
Okay. Are there any public comments on the quarterly financials?
Just a really naive question.
You want to come up to the mic, Mike? Yeah.
Bring that general fund up again.
Yep.
When you say transfer out, it sounds like it's gone. If that's true, then the balance would be about a little over $2,555,000. So does transfer out mean it goes into some other
Yeah, so the two major transfers from the general fund out to other funds. One is what you see on the screen there is Capital Projects Fund. That's entirely general fund money. So we move it from the general fund to the Capital Projects Fund. That's the bulk of the money. The remaining amount there's a general fund contribution to the Senior Mobility Program. And so that money gets moved from the general fund out to the Senior Mobility Program Special Revenue Fund.
So, as I thought you might say, in other words, it's a transfer into other
Yes.
funds held by the city.
Yes, it does not vanish into thin air, I promise. Yeah.
That's good.
Thanks,
That's
Mike.
what I wanted.
Any other public comments?
I move we receive and file the report.
Okay, public comments are closed. It's been moved in second. All in favor? Aye. No opposed? Motion carries. Next, we move to the consent calendar. All items appearing on the consent calendar are considered by the city manager to be routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or city staff requests that specific items be removed from the consent calendar for a separate discussion. Members of the public may address the city council on any item appearing on the consent calendar at the time the item is considered, regardless of whether or not the item has been removed from the consent calendar. Items that are removed from the consent calendar will be considered after the item remaining on the consent calendar. So,
I'll move the consent calendar.
it's moved in second, the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. So consent calendar is approved. The next item is, public hearings. I'll turn this over to the city manager.
All right. The conditional use permit that we have on the agenda today, CUP 2025-0005, this relates to a property that is probably best known as the former Wells Fargo building. I'm going to start with a photo of it just so we can orient ourselves. This building is located on Paseo de Valencia. If you're looking from this perspective, to the right is San Sebastian, and then kind of further to the right is the former blue and white Laguna Woods Realty office that's slated to become the Parentis Healthcare headquarters. And then obviously across the street is like the Taj Mahal and some other medical uses. So this location, which is 24301 Paseo de Valencia, we received an application from We Architects Group on behalf of the property owner to amend an existing conditional use permit to do two things: to allow for the establishment of a medical clinic use, and we'll talk about that in a moment, and then to allow alternative provisions to the city's otherwise standard off-street parking regulations. As with any conditional use permit, the approvals that you're contemplating today, if approved, would apply to both the proposed use of the site and then eligible successor uses at the same project location. In this case, the conditional use permit that they're seeking to amend was approved by the City Council in 2000. It's identified as CUP 00-02. So, as I mentioned, the proposed conditional use permit would allow for the establishment of a medical clinic use. They are expressly contemplating something that is probably more generally referred to as an urgent care that provides outpatient medical services to humans. So this isn't a veterinary use, it isn't an emergency room, it isn't an inpatient facility. This is an urgent care that provides the kinds of things that you would expect an urgent care to provide. And we've enumerated those in your agenda packet as well. In addition to allowing the establishment of the medical clinic use, one of the things that we do during the discretionary development review process is take a look at parking and circulation on the site to make sure that it is both sufficient for the proposed use and that it conforms to the standards in the Laguna Woods Municipal Code. In this case, there are 83 parking spaces out there at present. That is consistent with the number of off-street parking stalls that there are required to be from that previous 2000 era conditional use permit. In looking at the sizing of those stalls, there is a single stall that does not conform to the Laguna Woods Municipal Code's striping standards. So it's the incorrect size for a standard parking space, it is too small for an accessible parking space, and it is incorrectly dimensioned for an alternative vehicle parking space, which would be something like a golf cart or a motorcycle. So in looking at the uses that they have on site, this building currently has an optometrist, a pharmacy, and then a third vacant unit that they're looking to use for this urgent care medical clinic use. 82 parking spaces is sufficient for that use. And so rather than require the property owner to make physical modifications to the property to maintain that 83rd space in conformance with the municipal code, the proposal today would allow them to simply stripe it out. So they would have 82 parking spaces, all of which conform to the municipal code's requirements. And they would have this kind of spit of asphalt that has the diagonal striping across it that wouldn't be counted towards their parking and wouldn't be available for parking. Again, 82 is sufficient for the uses that are proposed for the site. We have conditions of approval that we've proposed included as Exhibit A to Attachment A in the agenda packet. Those conditions of approval would regulate the use in a manner consistent with the municipal code, in particular the portions of the municipal code having to deal with commercial zoning districts. Wanted to highlight 3 of the proposed conditions of approval for your reference. 1, there's a prohibition on providing dental services and emergency services, as well as housing patients overnight. Those distinctions are necessary to differentiate the medical clinic use from what our code defines as hospital uses. And also it carves out that dental services use because that has a different impact on traffic assumptions than what we factored into the analysis for this project. It limits the hours of operation for the medical clinic use to 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday. So it would be allowed to operate 7 days a week. It would only be allowed to operate during kind of conventional business days for the urgent care. I'm told that the urgent care provider that the landlord is contemplating leasing to may not, at least initially, intend on using the entirety of that time span. But we've included 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. to allow them flexibility in the future. And then, as I mentioned, there's requirements in the conditions of approval to make some minor modifications to parking lot striping to address that irregularly sized space, but also to identify a loading zone, both with striping and signage for passengers coming and going from the urgent care, recognizing that not all passengers may park and walk in from the parking lot. Some may be parked or maybe dropped off on the curb. So having said that, there's an opportunity for a public hearing today. After you open that public hearing and receive anything in the way of public testimony, we would recommend that you close the public hearing and adopt a resolution titled A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, approving conditional use permit CUP-2025-0005 to amend conditional use permit CUP-00-02 to allow for the establishment of a medical clinic use and alternative provisions to off-street parking regulations, resulting in a reduction in available off-street parking stalls at 24301 Paseo de Valencia, Laguna Woods, California, 92637, and determining that the conditional use permit is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act pursuant to Section 15301 of Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations. With that, I will turn it back over to the mayor for the public hearing.
Okay. We're open for public hearing. Are there any public comments? Seeing none. Oh, I see one. Yes.
I just have a simple question, and it was, you said that emergency care.
Is your mic on? Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. It just puzzles me because you say it's kind of emergency care or for people to walk in. What's going to prevent somebody walking in if they got a serious cut or something like that? That's emergency care. You're not going to immediately transfer them across the street to the hospital. unless it's really, much more serious than what they could handle. So I'm a little confused by that term as to what that means to the applicant.
Sure. So emergency care for the purpose of the municipal code and kind of conventionally within the medical community is meant to prohibit them from accepting patients transported via emergency ambulance. We didn't analyze this in the context of there being lights and sirens coming to the site from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. There are any number of conditions that a person may walk into an urgent care with that might result in them being transferred to an emergency room. This doesn't in any way prevent that. It simply prevents them from operating as an emergency room receiving emergency care patients.
I'm sure the applicant understands. I'm not
Yeah.
sure anybody else does.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you, Catherine.
Any other public comments? No? Public hearing's closed. So,
All right, so
Councilman,
yeah.
I was just curious where the drop-off area is on here, if it, where it shows, because obviously that I care, when I take my husband somewhere, I drop him off, and it isn't marked where,
Yeah, it's marked on the, sorry, I don't have the full size.
is it?
plan set
I
in
must
front of
not
me.
be
Let me
seeing it.
Open it up here. So I think there's a note on the side. Designated passenger loading area is 150 and 151. So you're looking for a box that says 150. Nadia, you want to point it out for me and I'll attempt to explain it? 151. So if you're looking at the large version of the plans, kind of directly below where it says pain management against the curb there, there are 3 parking spaces identified as 151.
I see
Those will
that.
be marked and signed for drop-off.
For the urgent care?
Yes.
It seems like quite a ways from the door of the urgent.
Unfortunately, they're the closest parking spaces that are not kind of the curbside parallel parking. So they're the closest, they're immediately adjacent to the accessible parking spaces, which are also as close as possible to the urgent care. Problem with that building is that the way it's divided, there's units in the front of the building, but all the parking is in the back of the building.
Oh,
And it is flat on the back side. So the front side of the building has that large staircase coming
Right.
up off of the street. Everything on the rest of the site is flat. So you walk in and there's kind of like a, I don't know, like a walkway area that demises the several units. So you would walk straight back from where the accessible parking spaces are into the urgent care.
so through the pain management to the urgent care.
You don't actually have to walk through the pain management unit,
Okay.
but you walk kind of adjacent to the pain management unit.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm sorry, I just didn't see
No,
that.
you're fine.
any additional comments?
Now, so right now, we have optometry and pharmacists occupying that area.
Yes.
Now, for this urgent care, it's mainly the pain management and that smaller portion is an urgent care? Is that what it is?
The urgent care footprint is smaller than the
In the back of the
pain management. I don't know if it,
facility?
so it looks like the pharmacy use is about 3,600 square feet, and then the rest of the medical use, which combines the pain management use and the optometry use, that is, and then the urgent care use, that's 17,000 square feet. So yes, the urgent care is, I believe, the smallest portion of that.
And they all have a separate entrance, because I'm familiar with, you were
Yeah.
mentioning that you were going to the bank, and I'm trying to picture.
They've done some work in the building, so the entrances are, I think, slightly different than what you're accustomed to. But yes, each of the units has its own entrance and exit.
Any other council comments?
I move the recommended action.
I actually had a question too. First off, I wanted to comment that they've done a fantastic job. Is somebody here representing? Okay, that the refurbishment of the building turned out really nice. I haven't been in since you were removing that tile. Did you change the tile? It looked like you did interior-wise, because it was, you talked about it earlier. Walker had trouble on the other tile. Now this tile's much easier. Yeah, I think it turned out really nice. It's very tasteful. I had a couple of questions having to do, when the city creates the municipal code, do we use what do I want to say, a sample from the state, or how does that work? Because the council didn't sit and choose all these little specifications, I can guarantee you, and yet I listen to things and I think, wow, why is that there?
Yeah, so as is the case with most cities, when cities incorporate, they typically adopt, if not the exact same, then a close version of whatever the county code of ordinances was.
Okay.
And so in our case, that's what happened. Initially, we carried over the county code of ordinances. Then we adopted a slightly modified version of it that was meant to be a little bit more particular to us. And then as happens over time, we tinker with it and modify it. And so it eventually becomes something that is more representative of local needs. There have been a couple of more significant updates to the municipal code over time. But you've also witnessed we kind of modify pieces of the municipal code here and there. So it's largely, I would say, based on the county's requirements from prior to incorporation, but it's been updated and modernized a bit since then.
It sounded like a little dated there for me for a second there. I don't know. I don't want to go back
Parts of it
through
are.
Pardon?
Yeah, absolutely. Parts of it are very dated.
Okay, so I won't even address that then because
You're not incorrect at all.
Okay, thank you. I just heard things. I thought, what in the world? How that happened? Okay. Anyway, it sounds to me like it works fine. And I did want to say great job on the design of it, because we're talking about a plan and yours fits. You didn't change the building. The building had a certain appearance. You kept with it. I think it looks really nice. I appreciate all the time and effort that went into it.
Thank you.
I have another question. Now, the closest urgent care from this building is the one in Taj Mahal, right?
I assume that's correct, yeah.
Do we have any guidelines or anything that says how far?
Buffers between uses. Yeah, so we don't with respect to urgent cares. There are some businesses like cannabis dispensaries that require buffers between them. We don't have any limit on the number of urgent cares, and we don't have a buffer requirement. But importantly, the Taj Mahal side of the street is in Laguna Hills. So even if we did have a buffer, the buffers don't generally apply when you cross city lines. Yeah.
We can't limit Laguna Hills
Right.
from.
You could theoretically limit yourself based on what's in Laguna Hills, but
We do
not
that.
vice versa. Yeah.
Did you move it?
Yeah.
I second it.
Okay, it's moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. The next item, 8.2, wildlife feeding
Wildlife feeding
regulation.
regulations. I want to point out before I get started, I appreciate Jim Barris from Laguna Beach Police Department and John Thompson. Wave your hand, raise your hands, there we go, in the back. So we want to talk about feeding wildlife regulations, and I wanted to start with a couple of slides that you may already be familiar with. You may have seen these on Channel 3. You may have seen them on TV6 as well. You may have also seen flyers with this information in laundry rooms and other locations in the community. But before I talk about the regulations, I want to talk about some of the many reasons why feeding wildlife is discouraged by the city. And notably, feeding wildlife is also illegal in most cases. Chief among them, and I think this is very relevant to issues going on in the community at present, coyotes and other predators follow their prey. And so even when a resident believes that they are feeding squirrels or rabbits, the world is a food chain. It eventually attracts predators that feast on those smaller animals. That draws wildlife closer, which also brings with it the potential for illness caused by those animals. And I know some of our council members, by virtue of their service on the Vector Control District, can speak more specifically to the threat of typhus and plague and other illnesses that come with animals that, yes, admittedly may seem furry and sweet. They are wildlife that need to maintain a distance from the public. And then it's also important to recognize that feeding wildlife, though very often well-intentioned, is not a good idea for the animal itself. As I've been speaking throughout the community on this topic, I keep saying wild animals need a wild diet, not our diet. There are any number of reasons why it is unhealthy and dangerous to feed animals. It's dangerous for the person doing the feeding. It's dangerous for the people who live in the area that animals now frequent with more habituated or aggressive tendencies, and it's dangerous for the animals themselves. And so I wanted to start with that. There's some information in your agenda packet, some reference documents from the federal government and from the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District that speak to some of the issues related to squirrels and rats and bird feeding, wildlife feeding in general. And then there's a relatively short article written by USDA staff related to coyotes and their kind of varied opportunistic diet. Your existing municipal code, there's a section 5.20.070 that contains a prohibition on the feeding of wildlife. And I want to kind of piggyback on what Councilmember Moore mentioned during the last item, that this is one section of the code that is very, very outdated. The City Council adopted it in October of 2000. It is a code section that was likely lifted from other municipal codes from other cities. The similar language exists in other municipal codes that we've reviewed. Rather than containing an outright blanket prohibition on feeding wildlife, it makes illegal the feeding of 5 different types of wildlife. So there's a kind of broader category referred to as non-domesticated mammalian predators, and it gives an example of coyotes as being one of those. And then it specifically identifies raccoons, foxes, skunks, and possums. I have no insight for you on exactly how this list came to be, but I think what the body of documentation that we provided in this agenda packet and kind of what conventional wisdom holds is that feeding wildlife is a bad idea far beyond these 5 categories of wildlife. I'll also say that from an enforcement perspective, it is very, very difficult for an enforcement officer to take action under this code section because it requires that they identify the types of animals being fed, which requires them to witness animals actually eating meat or other food left out for them. So as we've been dealing with the myriad of coyote issues over the past 6 months or so, we've identified an update of this ordinance as something that would be beneficial to all, with the goals of making it more enforceable, and also really underlining the issue that feeding wildlife is a bad idea, really irrespective of what you're feeding. So the proposed ordinance, which is in your agenda packet today, I'm going to touch on some of the more significant things that it does. The most important by far is that it broadly prohibits any action that is reasonably likely to provide sustenance for coyotes, rodents, vermin, or other wildlife. Now, it includes a number of exemptions from that. There are some things that we're not looking to fully criminalize or make illegal, but I will say 2 things. One, enforceability goes way up under the proposed ordinance. It will be much easier for John and our other animal services officers to enforce these prohibitions. And then we've also aligned it better with state law. There are principally two sections of state law that prohibit feeding wildlife. We have included language in here that makes a violation of those sections of state law violations of our municipal code as well. That's important for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that we are hopeful that we will be able to work out a more collaborative relationship with California Fish and Wildlife that allows us to jointly take enforcement action against individuals feeding wildlife after they've been advised that, it's illegal and discouraged. In addition to that broad prohibition, which we'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide as well, but in addition to that, a couple of other things that the code does. It explicitly allows staff to use surveillance cameras and other technology to identify violations of the wildlife feeding prohibition. Candidly, one of the biggest issues with enforcement, besides the way the ordinance is written, is that feeding wildlife takes a split second, right? Somebody goes to the store, they buy something, they put it out on the front lawn. The likelihood of an animal services officer or a code enforcement officer being there to witness it and write a citation is very low. We have a number of residents who are very good about providing us with photographic evidence or information on what they observe, but it would be useful to us to be able to deploy surveillance cameras with, of course, the permission of the property owner. We wouldn't be able to do this without United and Third and GRF, whoever the underlying property owner is. But placing surveillance cameras out there to at least help us try to pin down which unit or manor is responsible for the wildlife feeding. That would obviously all be done in accordance with applicable law, including privacy laws. But we included it in there as a tool that we would have to use. Likewise, it includes explicit language to allow us to file complaints and reports with the state when we believe that an instance of wildlife feeding could also violate state law. This is meant to continue to foster that hopeful collaboration with Fish and Wildlife as we move forward. And then far less significantly, we also included language that allows us to, in shorthand, refer to this section as our wildlife feeding ordinance, rather than its much more verbose actual title. I wanted to give you a couple of examples. These are included in the proposed ordinance. We tried to provide examples of things that would generally be considered providing sustenance to wildlife. And I imagine these are things that have already crossed your minds, but these are all things that we have witnessed, right? This is an ordinance based in reality, and so I know I've shared with many of you and with many members of the public that just in recent months, we've had instances of residents leaving full uncooked chickens out in common areas. We've had residents fill outdoor planters with dog kibble. We have a continuing problem with soup bones being left in gutters in parking areas inside the village. So this isn't a theoretical problem. This is an ordinance based off of what is actually occurring. So examples of prohibited items, obviously depositing, leaving, placing, or throwing food outdoors is broadly prohibited. Directly providing food to an animal, an example of that might be sitting on your porch and feeding squirrels as they come up to take food out of your hands. Leaving pet food or water bowls unattended outdoors in areas that are readily accessible by wild animals. This is meant to prohibit principally leaving pet food and water bowls in common areas when there is no dog around to eat out of them. So again, another thing that's been observed is people leaving water bowls out on a lawn. There is no dog using the water bowl. It's clearly meant to feed rabbits, squirrels, insert wildlife here. Something like that would be prohibited. There are some exclusions. We're not looking to prohibit food or water bowls that are placed inside walled patios. We're also not, in general, this ordinance doesn't apply on second floors and above. We're not looking to suddenly start policing the third floor of garden villa buildings and moving, pet food and water bowls out there. For bird feeders, we've tried to be nuanced about this. I recognize that there is a lot of affinity in some circles for bird feeders. This proposed ordinance doesn't prohibit the use of bird feeders. It does require that residents make a reasonable attempt to clean up after the bird feeders for anything like accidental spills, wind, squirrels interfering with bird feeders. Even birds in the course of foraging and discarding seeds can cause seeds to drop to the ground. So as long as it's small incidental amounts that we can tell the resident has made a reasonable effort to clean, we wouldn't treat that as a violation unless there's concurrent evidence of rats, whether that's rat droppings or, unfortunately, as some residents have videos and photos of, rats coming out at night feasting on what's below bird feeders. So the important caveat there is if it's attracting rats, we have a problem. But if it's a bird feeder that it's clearly an inadvertent spill that somebody made an attempt to clean up after, all we're asking is that you maintain the bird feeder. And then with respect to fruits and vegetables, kind of two principal prohibitions: not allowing fruits and vegetables to decay or rot on trees or plants. And then if those fruits and vegetables fall or otherwise find themselves on the ground, you need to pick them up, not allow them to accumulate there, remain on the ground, or decay and rot. Now, again, in terms of exemptions, we have, for instance, exempted the garden centers from this ordinance. Those garden centers, they have other protections in there for wildlife. We're not looking to become, the police officers for fallen fruit inside an area where fruit is intended to be grown. This is meant to require a level of maintenance for the individual kind of 1 and 2 off fruit and vegetable bushes throughout the community. Those are some examples. Again, there's a lot of nuance to it. The ordinance is a couple of pages. It includes a number of exemptions. It includes language that's intended to provide our enforcement officers with some clarity of direction on what is and is not a violation. But the key here is that we're looking to be firm but reasonable. Wildlife feeding is not the only reason that coyotes are in Laguna Woods. I don't mean to suggest that at all. But in a multi-pronged approach, this is a very important issue. And it's something that really logically shouldn't be happening, right? People should not be going to the store and buying meat and leaving it out. They shouldn't be discarding unused soup bones in the street. They shouldn't be leaving water bowls out for wild animals to drink from. So it's meant to capture that. It's not meant to criminalize kind of the incidental household things that may occur. Having said that, there's a public hearing that the mayor can open in just a moment. After that public hearing, our recommendation is to approve the introduction and first reading of an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending section 5.20.070 of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code pertaining to the prohibition of feeding or taking any other action which is reasonably likely to provide sustenance for coyotes, rodents, vermin, or other wildlife, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act. If the City Council takes that action today, this ordinance would come back to you at your regular meeting in March, and then if adopted at that point, it would take effect 30 days thereafter. And I do want to note that even though we're proposing modifications to this ordinance, our existing efforts to educate and provide outreach to members of the public will not stop as a result of this. We recognize that there's a level of awareness that needs to be maintained around the issue of feeding wildlife. This gives us an additional tool, but obviously our goal is always voluntary compliance, helping people understand that what they're doing, though well-intentioned oftentimes, is not maybe the best course of action. So that would still be the priority, but this gives us something to backstop it with. And with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor for the public hearing.
Okay, open for public hearing, public comments, please.
Hi, Chris. You used the word nuance with respect to bird feeders and elsewhere at other points. I'm all in favor of nuance. There's nothing nuanced about surveillance cameras. They are not nuanced. That's the thin edge of a wedge. And that opens eventually to opening that to all kinds of surveillance authorities, agencies, and others that I think could be very dangerous and expose people in very unsatisfactory ways. So I urge the city council to remove that highly non-nuanced aspect of this thing.
Thank you. Yeah, I can respond. I appreciate your comments, Mike. Let me just, so that everybody hears it together, the language in the ordinance, it's in the use of technology section in subsection D. It says the city manager may use surveillance cameras and similar technology to identify violations of this section. The use of technology shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws. No surveillance cameras shall be affixed to or installed on any private property without authorization of the property owner of record for the parcel where it is to be placed. This doesn't give the city discretion to violate the law. It doesn't give the city discretion to force the placement of surveillance cameras on private property if the private property owner is not amenable to it. The idea is not that this would allow the proliferation of permanent surveillance cameras throughout the community. A, I don't believe the property owners would consent to it. B, the city doesn't have the funds or resources to support something like that. And C, the idea with the surveillance cameras is simply to provide, in an area where there is a recurring problem with feeding wildlife, it is impossible for us to contemplate a reality where we would be able to park an enforcement officer out there to wait for the feeding of wildlife to occur. For the ordinance to be enforceable, we obviously hope that we can do that voluntarily. If we receive a report of feeding wildlife on X block, our first course of action would be to send either our animal services officer or code enforcement officer out there to provide education and outreach to residents in the area. If that was not successful in stopping the feeding of wildlife, we're at a fork in the road. Either we decide that we can't enforce it unless our code enforcement officer or animal services officer happens to be there and witness the feeding of wildlife, or we deploy some sort of technology in a targeted, focused, lawful manner that maintains privacy, and use that to be the force multiplier to be able to actually take enforcement action. So it is the council's discretion. I completely understand Mr. Rao's concerns. I understand I'll broaden my statement. I understand in general concerns related to surveillance cameras. I don't believe the intent here is for it to proliferate. I just think without the ability to use some sort of camera, we are not going to be able to enforce the recurring violations where voluntary compliance isn't being obtained through education, outreach, that sort of thing. So I appreciate that there's a difference of opinion. That's my 2 cents on it. We can also, if you'd be interested in hearing from Laguna Beach Animal Control, I can invite Jim up to give his thoughts on the use of surveillance cameras and other technology in this. But I do want to, I'm a proponent generally of only adopting ordinances that we can enforce. If our enforcement is going to be limited to voluntary compliance or observed violations, then I just would want us to be honest about that and not misrepresent how effective the ordinance could be.
Could that be stated, I see what your point is, could that be stated that it has a limitation of time? That let's assume that a neighbor says, hey, my neighbor keeps feeding, and you say, well, we have no proof. Well, we're gonna put this camera up temporarily if you will allow that camera. The camera's up there, and it has a beginning and end. It's not there permanently affixed forever. Could it be stated that way? Could the attorney address that?
Yes, we could definitely add language. I would want to take just a couple-minute recess so that we can coordinate on the language. But if we wanted to add language that makes it clear that it would be
non-permanent
temporary.
camera.
Yeah, not
We
non.
just said non-permanent
Yeah.
camera.
We could definitely add language around that. Again, the idea is not that we're gonna.
It said non-permanent surveillance cameras would only be affixed or installed on private property with property owner authorization. Non-permanent meaning it is not to stay there forever.
I'm not sure that would completely address the concern, but I think that yes, we could do something like that. I have no problem with that at all. The idea is to treat it as a scalpel, not a.
I just have one other question. Let's assume that this person did do it. You get the camera, you've got the proof.
Sorry,
Now
can
what
you-
happens? Oh, I'm sorry.
What happens to that person?
Yeah, so we have a number of enforcement remedies available to us, but the most likely situation is if we're able to identify a person who is feeding wildlife in violation of the ordinance, we would run that through our administrative citation process. So a first violation would be $100, second violation would be $200, third and subsequent violations within a 12-month period would be $500. That would be from the city's side. There may be corresponding penalties on the state side if it also violates state law, but from the city side, administrative citations are how we generally
The
enforce.
state general,
I think the state treats them as misdemeanors and can theoretically fine up to like $1,000, but their enforcement program is kind of both outside our purview, but also I think highly dependent on resources.
Oh.
I don't know is the short answer. I know they've responded to a couple of feeding wildlife complaints in Laguna Woods, but
taking this one step further, the person is fined. They tend to be thinking individuals, and they continue to do it, and then they refuse to pay. Then what happens?
yeah, so that is difficult. So there's a couple of ways that we could deal with that. Unfortunately, in California, code enforcement citations are not something that can be, for instance, leaned against a property, right? So we don't have the ability to treat it like medical debt or criminal violations where you can lien properties. In that scenario, though, I'm imagining that not only have they not paid the citation, but they're continuing to violate the ordinance, then we have the ability to either go through a civil or criminal complaint process through the court system, or we can go through a public nuisance abatement process through a separate portion of our code. So that's where I say that there are a couple of remedies available to us.
Say they're public nuisance, and what do? You still have a court thing?
It eventually, yes, maybe. The public, the public nuisance process involves a hearing at the administrative level, an opportunity to correct, some opportunities to provide evidence. If you get through that process and there still hasn't been satisfaction to it, then the city can go and either pursue inspection warrants, abatement warrants, other remedies through the courts. So it may still end up at the court level, but there's a kind of a fairly robust process before you get to that point.
Okay, I had one more statement on that. You could change that with a camera and say a temporary camera. Temporary means less than 1 year. How's that? Is defined as
I
less
wouldn't
than 1
even,
year.
I mean, so
I'm just
I'm not
trying
even
to-
anticipating using them for that long. I'm talking
I
like a
know,
couple of
I'm
days.
just
Yeah.
giving a window. They don't do it, you put the camera, then you take it down. A continuous use of less than 1 year.
Yeah, I
How's
think that Alicia and I could definitely come up with
Okay,
some
all right,
language.
all right.
I think we've got a couple other council.
But yes, go ahead.
Have comments. Another public comment.
Yeah, we're still in the public hearing technically.
Yes.
I say the issue, and I have been meaning to kind of talk to the council about these flocks cameras that the police are using to identify targets for ICE. So I would recommend these be non-networked cameras, not interoperable with a flock system, that the memory card, they be reviewed once a week, and that memory card erased if there's no evidence of wildlife feeding. Because like Mike, I'm quite concerned. And who's the property owner that gives permission? GRF? None of us would have
that would be
any
true.
control.
Yeah, BGRF, I would think. Oh, no, United or Third, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, any other public comments? Please come to the mic.
So just to be clear, you can definitely allow people to speak again, but then you need to allow everybody who's speaking
Okay, well
again to
then,
speak
I
multiple
changed my mind,
times.
Mike. You can't, yeah.
Is-
We'll,
is-
yeah, we're just allowing you to speak once, so. Otherwise, we'll be here all night.
Or allow everyone to speak more than once.
Personally, I thought you did a very good job of putting out together. I learned quite a bit, and I think if anybody sat and read the information, I was surprised to find that in Illinois, they have troubles with the coyotes because they're killing the deer. I never even realized that coyotes can kill deer, but then it depends if they get them when they're young. I understand that in Minnesota, they offer rewards for people to go out and shoot coyotes in order to save the deer, because deer hunting is a very big issue in Minnesota. So this is an issue that's nationwide. We all have to decide what's the best way to implement this when the coyotes are trying to live in an area that have senior citizens with animals, and that people, when they move here, need to understand that they have a responsibility to protect everybody and not just act independently as they wish. Otherwise, they should be moved in some place where they're out in the far wilds and nobody else is around and they can do whatever they want. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close public comments now, and any council comments? We'll start this end.
Yeah, I think you did a really, really good job with this ordinance. I mean, we've done a lot of work and you've put everything all together. So good job. People need to realize that there's a direct correlation between their putting out food and their neighbor's pet dying. And if they're doing it because they love animals, they should love their neighbor's pets too. And that it's causing the problem. I can understand somebody wanting to feed squirrels or put food out there, but not when it's causing the death of something that many of us consider family. We invest a lot of love and care in our animals, and our residents are hurt trying to save their dog or cat from being snatched away by the coyote, and they're getting hurt too. So this is a problem with a whole lot of different issues, and you've done a really good job putting that all together. And having been on Vector, yeah, there is a lot of typhus on rats, the fleas that come from there. So the fewer vermin that we can have in the community, the better. So the less food we have, the less attractive we'll be. And so I think we did a really good job. And it's just going to take training, and time. The fact that we're abating the coyotes that we're abating, but we can't kill them all. I wouldn't want to kill them all, kill our way out of it. This way that we'll get back to a balance of what there can be. And I understand this problem with the cameras, but when it comes down to the safety of our residents and what they consider family, if I had to choose one or the other, I would mediate it as best as I could and then come down on the side of protecting our pets and our people. People need to change their behavior and not put out the food. And so I think we did a really good job, and I would be happy to move this ordinance.
Before you do that, I think there is some benefit. I recognize the concerns around surveillance cameras, so before you move the ordinance, I would like to propose some slightly modified language. I'm working on it right now, so you can continue your discussion.
Did you have any discussion while he's, Pearl?
We already have the rules, but we're just implementing. And I think we are telling ourselves and to the residents that we are very serious about this business, and we would like to enforce some of the areas and clarify so that whenever we have helpers out there, it will be easier for them to deal with it because we do have a clearer guidance. And I understand the concern about the camera issue. So we'll see how that comes, how we word that. So, it's not to punish them or to make it difficult. Just our main purpose is to make it safer and have a firm stand on what's going to be the consequences when they violate the rules. So I think it's a good thing.
As has been said, this is a well-written ordinance, and it provides a mechanism for enforcement. Doug and Vicki, I think you were not here last month when all the dog owners came in to tell us about their losses and their fears. And it truly is a crisis, more so than there have always been coyotes running around through the village, and there have always been occasional coyote attacks, and there have always been people worried about coyotes and their pets. But we're in an epidemic now of coyote attacks, and it's truly a crisis. And our residents want us to do something, and we need to do something because protecting our residents and their pets and their loved ones is like the most basic public service we offer. And certainly I do understand your concern about intrusive cameras and government networks, and it's probably no consolation to you to say, we're the government, you can trust us to do the right thing. But this is a desperate time, and desperate times call for desperate measures. And thanks to your comments, we are putting in some modifying language on this, and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. But I think this kind of a camera is the only way, realistically, that we can put an end to this part of the activities that invite coyotes into our property. So, thank you.
Are you ready?
Did I talk long enough?
Somebody want to make one more?
I'll
round of
make one.
I'm in. He's
I'll
almost
I'll
ready.
make the final comment, which I think I really appreciate the one comment that Vicki did make about the non-network cameras, and I don't know how that would play into how you reword it, but it's just another thought, whether it's doable or not. But I think all of the discussions have been great, all the comments have been great, and this is a wonderful document that we've gotten. And it's a working document, it's not permanent as of yet. One final comment.
I just want to say that the village has been very helpful too. You were on TV6 with Gene Costello, and so it's a joint effort by all the mutuals, GRF and the city, so it's working very well.
Yeah, and that is a good point. The city and the mutuals have been meeting to come together with a plan that works well. And it's an educational plan, it's a plan that addresses behavior and all of the stuff that's in this ordinance that's a work in progress. And do you need me to keep talking, Chris? Because I can't.
Okay. I'll say one other thing.
Okay.
Approval of the property owner would be the approval generally of the mutuals or the GRF board. Those guys are elected. They do respond in some manner to the concerns of the residents. So if the residents are concerned about coyotes and about feeding coyotes, then the boards are likely to authorize the cameras. And then if the residents say, we fixed the problem, nobody's feeding coyotes anymore, then the boards are likely to withdraw their consent.
I think
just
Chris
as the
is
city
ready.
would prefer not to be filming our residents if it's not necessary.
Thank you. You ready, Chris?
I appreciate the time there. Okay, so I've taken that section of the code and put it on the screen. The red underlines are proposed insertions, so I'm going to read what it would say in totality. Use of technology. The city manager may use surveillance cameras and similar technology to identify violations of this section, provided such technology is not directly linked to any law enforcement database. The use of technology shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local laws. No surveillance camera shall be affixed to or installed on any private property on a permanent basis or without authorization of the property owner of record for the parcel where it is to be placed. Recorded footage from surveillance cameras shall be retained for periods of no more than 7 calendar days unless otherwise required by applicable federal or state law.
I move the resolution.
And I'm just going to caveat that by saying there may be state laws that require the retention of camera footage longer than 7 calendar days. I don't have that information available here, but what this is saying is we would, if we can retain it for only 7 days, that's what we would do. Otherwise, we would retain it by whatever period state law or state or federal law requires us to.
I move the corrected, amended.
I have a comment about that.
Okay.
If the recorded footage
Mike,
captures.
Mike.
Thanks. If the recorded footage captures a violation, then we're going to want to keep it longer in order to process the violation. So I wouldn't want us to have to discard
Yeah.
footage
Our
of somebody
evidence,
putting out
yeah.
food.
Thank you. 1 second. Recorded.
Unless needed for court. Okay, that's a good point.
It's always good to
Yeah,
draft,
you got to keep the evidence.
always good to draft legislation from the dais.
Now,
That last sentence now reads, recorded footage from surveillance cameras shall be retained for periods of no more than 7 calendar days unless otherwise required by applicable federal or state law or necessary for actual or pending enforcement action.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
It's
The
moved
amended
and
are
second.
All right. So Carol, that was your motion, and then Cynthia's seconding.
Yes, as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
All right.
Oh,
Thank you for your
work
input.
in action. Thank you, everybody, for your comments. So we can move on to the next item. Item 9, which is City Council business. 9.1, City Manager again.
We are now to the second reading of the ordinance that the City Council adopted at its last meeting related to City Council salary and expense reimbursement. As a reminder, this was a City Council initiated item, not a staff initiated item. There was a public hearing with the introduction and first reading of the ordinance in January. That ordinance was introduced and approved on a 4-1 vote with Councilmember Moore opposed. The proposed ordinance would do 2 things. It would increase the salary that members of the City Council are eligible to receive from $300 to $500 a month, beginning with salaries paid for the month of January 2027. And then second, as long as this section of the municipal code was being amended, it would also amend City Council expense reimbursement provisions to promote compliance with various state law. In addition to the proposed ordinance, there's a proposed resolution on the agenda today that would increase fiscal year 2026-27 appropriations by $6,000 to fund the increased salaries. You're on a 2-year budget. You're in the first year of that 2-year budget. The proposed salary increase would not take effect until January of 2027. So that $6,000 represents the maximum amount paid between January 2027 and June 2027. Funding for salaries subsequent to that would be folded into future budget processes. There is an opportunity today for public comments. It's not a public hearing, but there are public comments that can be accepted. And then again, staff is not making a recommendation here, but if the City Council wishes to proceed with this item, then there are 2 things that would be necessary. One would be to approve second reading and adopt an ordinance read by title with further reading waived, titled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending Chapter 2.02 of the Laguna Woods Municipal Code, increasing the salary that each member of the City Council is eligible to receive, and the expenses incurred in the performance of official duties that each member of the City Council is eligible to be reimbursed for, and determining and certifying that the ordinance is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, And then 2, adopt a resolution titled A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, amending and adopting the fiscal year's 2025-27 budget and work plan for fiscal year 2025-26, commencing July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026, and fiscal year 2026-27, commencing July 1st, 2026 and ending June 30th, 2027, increasing general fund appropriations to provide increased salaries members of the City Council are eligible to receive. With that, I will turn it back over to the mayor for public comments.
We're open for public comments. Seeing no public comments are closed. Council?
I move we approve the second reading and adopt the ordinance, and that we adopt the budget resolution.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I oppose.
One opposed? So
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next.
Next, we have, I lost my page here.
Well, the last item you have to listen to me talk about is employee positions, compensation, and benefits. This is in part the now annual update of compensation ranges for employee positions based on a market survey. And then there's a couple of other actions included. So the recommended action would approve a modified job classification for the assistant to the city manager position. That position's currently vacant, and as happens when positions fall vacant, we typically take a look at the job classification before embarking on a recruitment process to fill the position. So we've made some modifications to that job classification, which is a couple of years old. As I mentioned, increase to compensation ranges for certain employee positions based on a market survey. We have the detail on those proposed and existing changes in the agenda packet, and I'll review the changes for local agency executives in just a moment. So then in the resolution that establishes the compensation and benefits schedule, there is an exhibit that was added fairly recently, I believe within the last year, providing for employee education assistance. There's been a change in law, so starting in January, the law changed to put some additional parameters on the required repayment of educational reimbursements provided to employees. So right now, the ordinance or the resolution says, if you're an employee and you receive educational assistance from the city and you leave the city's employ voluntarily within 12 months of receiving a payment, then you need to repay that amount to the city. Assembly Bill 692, which is what took effect in January, requires agencies that require repayment to jump through a couple of additional hoops to do so. And in broad strokes, it requires that you look at the transferability of the credential that the employee received by virtue of the educational reimbursement, as well as the proportionality of the amount of the reimbursement required relative to the repayment period. This is all to say that it gets very complicated to, which I believe is the intent of the legislation, gets very complicated to attempt to require repayment of educational expenses. In looking at this internally, we are recommending today that rather than try to jump through those hoops, you simply eliminate the repayment obligation in the policy. We already limit the amount of educational assistance that an employee can be reimbursed for on 2 levels. It always requires supervisor and city manager approval, so not every request for education is necessarily reimbursed. And then it also limits the overall amount that someone can be reimbursed for based on their length of employment with the city. So you work for the city for a couple of years, you're eligible for, I think for a year, you're eligible for roughly $1,000. After that period, you stay with the city for a little bit longer, you're eligible for a little more than $2,000. You stay with the city longer than that, you're eligible for just over $5,000. And so from our perspective, rather than chasing the reimbursement of $1,000, $2,000, or $5,000 on the, probably rare or infrequent, at least, instance where an employee leaves our employ within that 12-month period. We think just the simpler, more efficient thing to do is not require the reimbursement and accept that, as with anything, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. I would hope that we don't have employees who leave so quickly after receiving educational reimbursement. But even with the repayment requirement in there, I wanted to flag for you that it would be an open question, and I think, again, to Councilmember Moore's question about recouping code enforcement expenses. If an employee leaves the city's employ and chooses not to repay that amount, the next logical question is the city looking to
Court case.
litigate to recover at worst just over $5,000? And the answer, of course, is going to be no. That would make no logical sense. And so I think the over/under on this, I understand why we included the repayment provisions. That was something that I wrote into the resolution before I brought it to you. But I think with these changes in state law, it's just simpler for us to back away from the repayment obligation. And then the fourth thing that the recommended action would do, and we already have this in some other documents, but in the spirit of having all the same information in as many documents as it's relevant to, we've added some asterisks to explicitly identify department heads for the purpose of state law that identifies local agency executives. So along those lines, for local agency executives, and that includes, generally speaking, any employee with whom you have a contract with, the chief executive of your agency, and then department heads within the agency, were required to make certain disclosures related to their salaries. And so there are 4 local agency executives, myself, our 2 director positions, the Administrative Services Director, City Treasurer, the Planning and Environmental Services Director, and then the City Clerk. Those local agency executives we've now asterisked in the ordinance or in the resolution. And then for the required reporting for those 2 director positions, we're recommending a 4% increase in their compensation ranges. I want to note, as we did in the agenda report, that increasing a compensation range is not the same as a pay increase. It only resets the starting and ending point, so the maximum and minimum that an employee can be paid. The only time that it is a pay increase is if the employee is currently receiving a rate of pay that would be below the new minimum for the range, in which case their pay would be adjusted upwards to the starting point for the range. For the compensation range increases that we're proposing today, there is a total of 1 employee in the city who is affected by it. It would be a part-time position that would go from making $21 an hour to $23 an hour. There are no other, on full-time positions, everyone is within the range that's simply being reset to align with market conditions. So, and so again, for those director positions, it would be a 4% increase to be roughly $139,000 to roughly $195,000 as shown on the screen. At this point, there's an opportunity for public comment, and then staff's recommendation is in one part to approve a modified job classification for the assistant to the city manager position, and then to adopt a resolution titled A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Laguna Woods, California, repealing resolution number 25-31 and establishing and modifying a compensation schedule and benefits for city employees, including the city manager and other local agency executives as defined in California Government Code section 3511.1. With that, I will turn it back over to the mayor for public comments.
We now open for public comment. Are there any public comments? Seeing none, public comments are closed. Council comments? Or move the resolution?
I move the proposed action.
Moved in second. All in favor?
I actually had a quick comment
comment,
having to do with this. The issue, first off, of education, anytime somebody gets education, we all benefit. Even if they don't use it here, they go somewhere else. They're more valuable to the society. So frankly, I just see education. I'm very supportive of education. Second one is that as we sit here and look at the salaries, that it's interesting those are not anywhere near the funds that I earned when I was working. And you look at it and you realize, wow, how things change so much. And I look at it and realize I would be totally out. If you were to ask me what the average whatever works, I would have absolutely no idea unless I saw a spread on it. And it shows you why we have to plan, because the cost for the city increases. Obviously, I mean, it's not going to stay the same, it's going to be going up. And so being aware of our costs is always extremely wise, and understanding how many people we need. And Chris does a very good job. We do not have excess people because it's easy to do that. Think we need this job done, we'll hire somebody. You put that person at jeopardy then when you can't use them and now you have to let somebody go. Understand what your needs are, and I really have to say I appreciate that, because that's what helps make our city competitive. And particularly when you look around, and I'm looking at cities, older cities in our county that are in financial trouble. They're larger cities, they had a lot of money coming in, and they chose to spend that money, and now they're in trouble. And it's very sad because some of them are very close to us. Anyway, thank you for putting this together, and I certainly support.
Okay. Any other comments? It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. So, resolution adopted. The next item is City Council reports and comments. First is the Coastal Greenbelt Authority. We met in January. Our next meeting is going to be in March. Orange County Fire Authority. Councilmember Horn.
I think first we'll play the quarterly roundup.
Mike.
Sure.
First, if Chris could play the quarterly roundup, please.
Absolutely. One moment.
There we go.
There he is.
I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear anything, but we're going to give it a shot. No. Okay. Give me just one moment. Do you want to talk about the open house first?
Yeah, why don't you put up the flyer, and we're having another open house this year on March 14th. It was wonderful last year with all the helicopters and the fire trucks and ambulances, and it's great for little kids and it's great for adults, and you get to see all the equipment out there. There'll be our accelerant dog, Freedom, retired. He got a plaque at the last meeting, and we have a new dog, Timber. They're really specialized dogs. There's not many in the United States that do this. They sniff out accelerants so they can find out where and what started a fire. And yeah, so Freedom is very happy. He gets to eat all the time now, not just for working. And so it's March 14th at 1 Fire Authority Drive, and it's like an all-day thing. So anyone that wants to come, bring your kids, bring your grandkids, and it's a wonderful place.
When does it start?
It starts.
I think last year it
Yeah,
was
it's
10.
like 10 to 4, so 10 to 3, something like that.
Really an amazing event. I didn't go last year, but I went years before, and it's really an incredible event.
It is, and the kids can get in the engines, and they can do, and you can. There's just so much you learn from each thing, and all the dogs will be there. The cadaver dogs and the search and rescue dogs, and the equipment that they use to pick horses up out of the canyons, and that swift water rescue things. I mean, they really do so much. It's wonderful. And most of our incidents here in Laguna Woods, we have 1,482 incidents here. Out of those, 1,006 were medical. So one thing that has happened that I didn't even know it was a problem because I'm so new, but apparently the last head of the Orange County Healthcare Agency was not real progressive at all. And there were a lot of treatments like blood transfusions and things that are available in other counties, but they were not available to our ambulances. So in those critical moments when you might have to go to the hospital, the best care was not available to you. Now we have, there's somebody new at the healthcare agency, and of course, I forgot the name of the man that's doing it, but he's in the emergency room at Saddleback, and he's a paramedic. So he is correlating the collaboration toward aligning those systems, the communicating with the hospital and with our ambulances so that we can get the latest medical equipment and anything life-saving we can get also, which I would imagine would be wonderful. He just announced it at this meeting. And we have our very own new fire chief that is coming here, Chief Ryan Bishop. You want to come up and introduce yourself, please? I'm sure you all remember Mike Summers. He got promoted, and we've gotten Chief Bishop.
Ryan Bishop, honored to be here. Recently promoted into Division 5. I will be your point of contact for any wants, needs, or desires from the Orange County Fire Authority. I'm really looking forward to working with you all and continuing to serve citizens of Laguna Woods. I started here in '97 at Station 22, so
Really?
yeah, it feels like coming home. So I appreciate the opportunity, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to what's next.
Welcome.
Thank you, welcome.
Thank you. Oh, and Chief, what was the name of that man that is doing for the collaboration between?
Dr. Josh Bobko?
Yes, that's it.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
Yeah, he's an amazing human. He is also, like I spoke with you earlier about, he's a graduate of the Air Force Academy as well. So he's a veteran and an amazing human being. So
Yeah.
get a chance to talk with him. He's something special.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So, Chris, were you able to get that video?
Yeah, I apologize. I'm not entirely sure what the issue is. We can't get the sound to come through the system.
Okay.
We can have it, we have a meeting next week. We can definitely have it ready by then. I'll continue to play with it in case it comes back during this, but
No problem.
apologies for that.
Okay,
Okay,
thank
and
you.
if it comes up, we can
Yeah.
circle back to it, right? Okay. Next is the Orange County Library Advisory Board.
Yes, we had the Orange County Library meeting, and I have a short slide presentation I put together.
All right.
Look at all those books.
December 1919, just to show you how old our Orange County Public Library system is, the Orange County Board of Supervisors resolved to bring a library service to all of Orange County outside the jurisdictions of those cities that already had existing municipal library districts. This is the this storefront. In 1921, the county librarian was Margaret Livingston, and she began administering the free library from a rented room right there on 508 North Main Street in Santa Ana, and that's where it was. That was the start of the Orange County system. Then I'm skipping over a lot because to keep this short, but the bankruptcy in 1994 caused a real disruption in the library service as the supervisors had to respond to what they were going to cut, what they were going to do about the bankruptcy. And then the budget was adjusted. And in 1997, they were dealing with this bankruptcy. They created the Library Advisory Board. And that's the board that I serve on now. That changed the way the library's portion of how they were administered, the money that they received, and it was created then, and it put a what do I want to say, a framework on how the library would be budgeted in the future. The San Clemente branch then was the first one to offer internet service in 1996. Seems like that wasn't long ago, was it? By 1999, then all the branches had include computer workstations with internet access. In 2003, the Laguna Woods branch opened in our city hall. That was not this building out here, but in our city hall. It was just some space. As popularity and use grew, the books were stacked on carts in the hallway as crowding the service area. How many people remember having to scoot around those books? And they would check the shelf, and then they'd go down the hall and look, as books were everywhere. That was 2003. Just think about that. Yeah. Okay. Then Connie Petrie Norris received that. She was newly elected. She got the $500,000 grant for a new library, and we began the construction in 2022. 2022 doesn't seem that long ago, but look already how different. Look at the building. And in January 2024, we opened our branch. It really changed the building, don't you think? I think it enhanced it. Tremendous difference. There's the board that was working on it. This automation, see those bins there? That's a conveyor belt. The automation continues to make OCPL more efficient. One example is the automated sorting system, which consists of readers. So they're barcodes on the books, and they're on various sides, so it doesn't matter which way the book lands on the conveyor belt. And then the books they read the barcodes and deposit them. If it reads and it comes by a little thing that's sticking out just about like that, then it just shoots it right down to the bin, which is going to deliver it to San Clemente, Laguna Woods, send it back to wherever it was, whatever. So all that's done now. None of that's done by hand. That's all done by automation. Our library requires only one bin, but some larger libraries require more, the larger cities. And you can see that yellow little thing in the larger picture. That right there to the right of it is the barcode with our city, and in that bin are books already that came down and deposit right there that will come to the library, in which you will pick up for your use, which you've put on hold. All right. So our Laguna Woods branch partnered with the African American Heritage Club to create multimedia display featuring historical items, which are right out there. You saw that. We have CDs. In this past year, we've also had some of the things that our branch does. We're just a small branch, but just think about all the service that we're getting from them. We've had a monthly California Master Gardens program, and something that's really nice to see is we're seeing more children, because children are using our library because there's homework assistance and all kinds of stuff. Some additional things that are being offered. We're one of the few libraries that offers an older adults program, and so Older Adults Month in May, we had all kinds of bins and things up there, and there's some photographs which I wasn't able to include in here of some of the older adults that come to our library, handicapped otherwise. And of course, you see up there that Alka Joshi, who is the daughter of our community member, she's a famous author now, so she's spoken several times for our group. And I think we all appreciate the library. We are so pleased to be a part of it, be a part of the OCPL system. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control District.
Well, my meeting is scheduled tomorrow, so I do not have a report today.
Our meeting next week.
Okay. Next, we have San Joaquin Hills Transportation Corridor Advisory. Councilwoman.
We are embarking on a major renovation of our building at 125 Pacifica, which is off Barranca near the Irvine Spectrum. It's the place that houses our staff and our call center and all of our construction planning and supervising and so forth. And we moved into it when it was about 10 years old. It was built for a different company. and now it's about 40 years old. And this organization itself, the toll roads, is scheduled to pay off its bonds in the 2050s. And not sure what's going to happen to the organization after that, whether it will automatically sunset or whether it will continue to use the tolls to improve transportation in South Orange County, which is sort of what I would like to see, but I won't be around then, so someone else will decide that. But we decided that we would stay and upgrade this building and stay in it until the 2050s. So there will be improvements to employee safety, because this is a place where the employees interface with the public, some of whom are upset about toll violations. We will have technology and IT upgrades. We will have energy efficiency improvements and solar power installed, and some seismic upgrades. And we've taken the first step now to hire an architect, so that's a work in progress. And the agency will have to move out of that building for about 18 months while the work is done. There is a program now where disabled veterans can ride for free on the toll roads. You have to register your license plate, and if you are a disabled veteran who chooses not to have a disabled veteran license plate, you can still register your license plate for free rides on the toll roads. Our bonds have been upgraded. When we first issued bonds for construction, they were really like junk bond quality, because there was nothing but projections and hope to sustain them. We issued bonds, and then we acquired right-of-way and got permits and built roads and began collecting tolls. So we had enormous bond debt and interest piling onto that for a couple of years before we ever began paying it off. But we're paying off a lot of the bonds early, and when your bond rating goes up, it's not going to make a big difference to the agency in terms of future borrowing, because we have no plans for future borrowing. But it does enhance the stability and the respectability of the organization so that others will partner with us. And for example, we are now processing the toll operations for the Riverside County Transportation Commission. And we are talking to the Sacramento Transit Authority about being their toll operator as well. So it gives us an opportunity. We're becoming kind of a toll processing agency just because we've shown ourselves to be responsible and well-run. That's all I have.
Thank you. The South Orange County Watershed Management.
At this point, we're still waiting. The issues of the state and bonds and having money available are kind of an issue. I did want to point out one thing, though. When we, as council members or elected people, we're responsible for the Federal Political Practices Committee, we have to fill out forms each year telling them where we receive our money, so that we're not influenced, and when we're voting on something, whether we have anything, an investment and benefit from that. And I'm bringing it up only because the rule, which was effective last year ago, January, is that if you receive a gift greater than $630, that you do have to, what do I want to say? You have to disclose that you received the funds. But if you exceed the $630, then you have to return that money to. The reason I'm saying that, because it happened to me. I took a trip with Watershed brings it to mind here. I took a trip to the Delta area, and the bus trip exceeded the amount. Because of the bus, we were on the bus many hours, and the bus driver cost is the bus drove up there and back, believe it or not, and the bus trip caused me to exceed the gift that I got for riding on the bus exceeds the amount of money, so I have to return some money. I'm just pointing this out that council members and elected people do receive benefits. Those benefits have to be acknowledged and they have to be disclosed. So there you go.
Thank you. The Community Bridge Builders Liaison, do you have a report? No, no report. Other comments and reports? I did attend a meeting in Sacramento on January 24th for the Community Service Policy Committee. It was a one-day turnaround trip sponsored by the League of California Cities. When we got there, first of all, there were no bills that we needed to vote on, so there were a couple of briefings. The Cal Cities advocacy team provided a brief oral update on the latest legislative and budgetary matters affecting the cities. There was also a presentation by the California Conservation Corps. The presentation included the mission, the history, the benefits of the program for the California Conservation Corps. The mission is to protect and enhance California's natural resources and communities while empowering young adults through hard work and education. And there was a slideshow presentation about the young people that are brought into these programs to teach them about conservation, to teach them about the community and wildlife and just being overall citizens, how to participate in disaster preparedness. So it's a whole program geared toward teaching young people to give back to the community. There was also a brief presentation on the federal impact of Medicare and homelessness in California. The presentation provided an overview of H.R. 1 and how federal funding cuts the policy changes, how the cuts in policy changes may provide an overview of H.R. 1 and how federal funding cuts and policy changes may impact local efforts to respond to homelessness across California. So there was a discussion about that. There was also, let's see, Cal City Advocacy provided some discussion about what the priorities for 2026 for Cal Cities. One is to protect and enhance local revenues and expand economic development tools, to strengthen partnership with the state and improve public safety, secure investments to prevent and reduce homelessness and increase the supply of affordable housing, and then to strengthen climate change resilience and disaster preparedness. There was also a little bit of a discussion about the government's budget, Governor Newsom's budget. Cal City staff provided an in-depth budget and legislative update, which included the governor's 2026-27 budget, includes $500 million for round 7 of the Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention, the HARP grant program. And that in the last year's budget, the rounds of funding is contingent on new accountability metrics that will be finalized later this year. So in essence, there really isn't any tangible money in the plan right now in the governor's budget for homelessness. Our next meeting is going to be Thursday, March 26th at 10 a.m. This one will be in Costa Mesa.
I did have one last comment. I helped with the homeless count, and I've done it for about 4 or 5 years, and I have definitely seen a change in the homeless population in our city, and I only go one night. I don't go every single night because they have different teams for different nights. And what I saw this time was it was definitely people who are seniors are living in their cars. And so I can tell you for a fact that people are running out of money. So I saw it, and I witness what is happening, and it's a really, it's a very difficult situation that I'm not sure we're addressing it in a way that we should, but it is a problem, and I definitely witnessed it, and I can tell you what I saw. Thank you.
And to your it is definitely an issue, and Cal Cities are really looking at and bringing home the point that there's no new money in the next year's budget to really address homelessness as as we think it should be. So,
You know, pardon me a second, have you gotten your numbers yet from the county? Okay, when do you usually get them?
I think it takes them a couple of months to clean up the numbers and deduplicate.
I would say the number was up, and remember, I'm only speaking of one evening, and, but I would say in our community that the numbers were up and it was not young, before it was usually young men, and I could tell you which demographic was there. This time, it was definitely seniors, so.
other comments and reports?
I have something.
Go ahead. You look like you've got something to say.
Before we close, I want to kind of bookend this meeting by noting that tomorrow is the day of remembrance for Japanese incarceration in 1945. President Franklin Roosevelt signed an executive order on February 1942, to remove Japanese residents from the West Coast. Over 120,000 men, women, and children of Japanese ancestry were imprisoned in concentration camps, and 2/3 of them were U.S. citizens. Eventually, we as a nation came to recognize and acknowledge what a terrible era this was, how contrary to our national values it was to sweep up thousands of people and imprison them just because of their ethnic heritage. As a nation, we eventually apologized for these acts, but this day of remembrance is a time to educate the public and honor the survivors, and to prevent the recurrence of this kind of injustice. These days, we need to hang on to our core beliefs about how America treats the people who live here. So the Day of Remembrance helps us to understand and acknowledge the past so we don't repeat it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item, we do not have closed session. No other comments, then our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, February 24th at 12:30 p.m. right here in City Hall. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Now, what